Fair warning, there are Avengers Endgame spoilers in this video. If you haven't seen Endgame, what are you doing watching a video on YouTube?
Go see Endgame right now!
Like, go! Leave! Stop! Go! It's great! And then come back here and watch this video. It's just as culturally relevant as Endgame, I promise you. Alright, now that you've seen the awesomeness that was Avengers Endgame, we need to talk about one of its most divisive moments. And no, I'm not talking about the fact that Captain America went back in time to live with Peggy Carter, though that makes no sense for his character. What, I mean, did he just let Bucky suffer the whole time? Or just let Hydra take over S.H.I.E.L.D.? He's like, nah, I'm gonna forget about all that and just stand here and dance with Peggy Carter for decades apparently, and then show up on a bench. And also, when did he show up on that bench? Was he like hiding behind a tree until exactly that point? He's like, haha, I'm old man America, I'm just gonna sneak up on this bench right now. It makes no sense and I'm just very upset about it. Sorry. That part of the ending is a sore spot for me. I love my Captain America, and I'm gonna miss him so much. No, the moment I really want to talk about is that big girl power moment that happens in the film. In the film's epic climactic battle, all of the major female characters in the franchise, minus Black Widow, who died earlier in the movie, meet in the middle of the battlefield at the same exact moment to attack Thanos. It's meant to be a big female empowerment, crowd-pleasing moment. And certainly in a lot of theaters, including my own, there were a ton of cheers seeing that girl power moment. Yeah, punch Thanos in his weird nutsack chin, Captain Marvel. That was me in the theater. I got some looks. Hashtag no regrets. Yet once the adrenaline wore off, looking back, a lot of fans took issue with that scene. Now, of course, there was the ever-present toxic side of fandom who would argue that this moment was blatant SJW politics getting into my comic book movie, and it's proof that this movie hates straight white men. You know, outside of Captain America, or Iron Man, or Thor, or Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Bucky Barnes, Loki, Star-Lord, Bruce Banner. Okay, I guess Bruce Banner is more of a straight green man, but you get the idea. And just to say it, centering women in a story isn't inherently political, nor does it mean that you hate men. I love men. Especially my future husband, Captain America, or past husband, I don't even know anymore, it's so confusing and I'm just lost without him. But even people outside of that part of fandom didn't seem to be pleased by this scene either. Many, like Rotten Tomatoes editor Jacqueline Coley, found the scene to be pandering.
It was so female thirsty. Either give me a female Avengers or don't. Forget this teasy foreplay. Give me what we all want.
So why did this moment that was supposed to be a crowd pleaser end up really pleasing nobody? And what makes a good girl power moment? Or is it impossible to really do one without feeling condescending or pandering? Let's dive in because it's time to nerd out. So let's break down why the Avengers Endgame girl power moment didn't work, and then analyze what would make a good girl power moment, or if it's even possible. First and foremost, the scene in Endgame makes no logistical sense in the movie. It's a forced moment that doesn't come naturally out of what's actually happening on the screen. Here we are, in the middle of a gigantic battle that spans what looks like miles and miles. There's stuff going on, Ant-Man's huge, Captain America's looking beautiful, Thor's like doing his awesome fat Thor thing, Hawkeye's Hawkeyeing. But at the exact moment that Captain Marvel needs help, literally every single female character, and only female characters, show up. Even Mantis. Like, what does Mantis even do in a battle like this? And despite protecting the Infinity Gauntlet being the most important thing to do in this battle, no male characters show up whatsoever. Not even Benedict Wong. I mean, what else does this guy have to do? It makes no sense logistically and doesn't flow naturally. So we're forced out of the movie and made aware of how unnatural this feels. And because we're aware of the moment, we're also very aware of who is missing. Earlier in the film, as I said, the MCU's most prominent female character, Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, gets killed. Black Widow has been around just as long as Thor, Captain America, or Iron Man, and has appeared in multiple franchises within the universe. And yet her death doesn't get the same significance that Tony Stark's does in the film. She doesn't even get a funeral in the movie. I mean, I guess Hulk throws a bench? I'm not saying she's as important as Iron Man, but she has been a part of this universe for a very long time, and the lack of truly acknowledging Black Widow's contribution to tying together the MCU feels egregious, especially in a movie that's supposed to be about celebrating all the connective tissue of the MCU. She's one of only a few major female Avengers, and important female characters in the entire movie. Captain Marvel barely gets screen time, and while we get cool cameos from the Ancient One, Peggy Carter, and Pepper Potts, the only other female Avenger that gets a significant arc in the film is Nebula. And I get the fact that this movie was about saying goodbye to our original hero, not necessarily someone like Nebula or the Ancient One, though Tilda Swinton being bald is always a welcome sight. But it really highlights the fact that there haven't been a lot of women in the MCU up until this point who have been highlighted. And why is this such an important thing to note? Well, compare the scene with a bunch of girls in it, which is played as this big moment, to earlier scenes in the movie where we have Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Hawkeye, Rocket, Ant-Man, and Iron Patriot all in the same room together talking about the Infinity Stones. It's just a normal scene, part of the plot. So women getting together has to be this big moment, and men working together is just played as normal. It says that women getting to be part of superhero-dom has to be a big deal, and men can just do it whenever. Though sadly, that's not entirely untrue. Women are just now getting to be superheroes in major blockbusters. At least ones that are successful and well written. I'm looking at you, Catwoman.
Like my nails? Just got them done.
Sure, we've got great movies like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel now, but think about the fact that it took over 20 movies before we finally got a female-led Marvel movie. So the MCU just this year finally decides to center women, and then asks us to pat them on the back for the female inclusion in their movie that celebrates its 10 years of storytelling, as if they've been progressive for that entire 10 years. It feels forced and feels like it's asking too much. And I'm not saying that the women that have been featured in the MCU aren't great and powerful, but the fact that they haven't been the focus of the story is important. It all comes down to this simple idea: diversity without inclusion is tokenism. Sure, the MCU may have a bunch of badass women, as the scene showed, but the fact is, they've never really been allowed to take center stage. And so a scene like the girl power moment in Endgame just falls flat, because it's not really building on anything. And for a movie that's about celebrating a 10-year cinematic achievement, that's kind of disappointing. So moving on, how do you build a great girl power moment? Is it even possible? I think so. But the way to do it isn't by going, yeah, look at me, I've got boobs and I'm gonna kick some ass. I mean, I'm honestly not entirely against a scene like that, though dear heavens, the comment section on that video, the comment section is dark and full of terrorists. I think the best girl power moments aren't ones that don't tokenize women by just saying, hey look, it's a girl doing things. No, I think there are a few ways to building a good girl power moment. One important aspect is to have it come naturally out of the story you're telling, but also deal with the unique perspective that being a girl in society brings. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at a girl power moment in the MCU that does work. In the movie Captain Marvel, I know this isn't my favorite Marvel movie either, but trust me on this, okay? At the end of the film, Jude Law, stands up to Captain Marvel, demanding that she fight him without her powers. Yet what does she do?
Prove to me you can beat me without...
I have nothing to prove to you.
Hell yeah! This scene is an amazing moment. The entire movie, Jude Law has been saying Captain Marvel isn't good enough, that she needs to stop being so emotional. That's something that women in the real world are told constantly every single day, that they can't take up space, and when they do, they have to do so in a way that appeases men or others. Yet when asked to live up to Jude Law's standards, Captain Marvel refuses, saying that she doesn't have to prove herself to anybody. She's allowed to take up space. She's allowed to be herself. It's a triumphant moment that feels natural to the story of that movie, but is also a concept that speaks to a woman's perspective. Now again, Captain Marvel, not a perfect movie, but that scene works. Another way to make a good girl power moment is to include a diversity of women. Women aren't just monoliths, just as men are. We can have a multitude of different personalities. But up until recently, women, especially in science fiction, usually fell into two categories. And because it's me, let's use Star Trek as an example.
Since you resist the present specimen, you now have a selection. The female you call number one has the superior mind and would produce highly intelligent children. Although she seems to lack emotion, this is largely a pretense. She often has fantasies involving you. The other new arrival has considered you unreachable, but now is realizing this has changed. The factors in her favor are youth and strength, plus unusually strong female drives.
So on the one hand, you have the stoic, silent woman who is never allowed to show emotions and is just tough at all times. Think Sarah Connor, Scully, or Ripley. Or on the other hand, you have the weak, romantic girl that wants a man at all costs, of which there are countless examples of in cinema. And often these two types of women are played at odds with each other. fighting against each other instead of working together. But you can have more diversity of women in your story. And I'm not just talking about racial diversity or sexuality diversity, but diversity of personality. Look at Game of Thrones. In that show, we have a ton of female characters, but all of whom are distinctly different from each other. Cersei is cold and calculating. Dany is ambitious and passionate. Arya is enigmatic and determined. Brienne is strong and honorable. The Queen of Thorns is witty and mischievous. Illyria Sand exists. All of these women are diverse, yet powerful in their own way. But you also can't say that them being women isn't important to the story. So a lot of these characters feel the brunt of what it feels like to be a woman that has as much gender stratification as Westeros. And this leads me into my next part. To make a good girl power moment, they have to help move the story forward. The reason the movie Wonder Woman was so powerful and was seen as such a great showcase for women wasn't just because there were a ton of women in it or because a woman was at the front of the poster. The later movie Justice League had the same exact women characters in it, if not more, and was criticized. It was because in Wonder Woman, women drove the story. Deanna made choices that caused things to happen. Things didn't just happen to her. And that's important, and is also why the Avengers Endgame moment didn't work. None of the women in Endgame actually really moved the plot forward. They just showed up for the group picture. But ultimately, in the end, I hope that the girl power moment isn't needed at all. Women should and always will have an outlook on the world that's different from men. It's not a better or worse viewpoint, it's just different. And that's what makes it interesting to feature women in stories. But the reason it still feels like a big moment to see a woman's perspective is because we still don't get to see enough women in stories today. Hopefully, with more diversity and inclusion, movies like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel won't feel like big deals because they're focused on women, but because they're just good movies. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video and want to see more videos like it, give my channel a subscribe. I promise you won't regret it. I have new videos each and every Friday. And if you want to help make these videos even better, consider giving to my Patreon page. Every little bit helps, and it helps improve the quality of these videos. And until next time, live long and prosper.